Well, COVID has altered many of our summer plans, while in Lorain County, one tradition will continue. Andrew Horansky is live on the county fairgrounds to explain. Hi, Drew.
Hi, Lena. Good evening to you. There has certainly been some good news here in Lorain County in recent days. Perhaps the best of it is that the county was downgraded on the state's COVID map from a Category 3 to a Level 2. And, of course, as we've been reporting and mentioning as well, the other good piece of news for many people here in Lorain County is that the county fair will continue as scheduled in late August. Now, earlier today, the mayor of Lorain did talk on MSNBC about what caused some of the progress here in Lorain, saying that the mask mandate worked, that most people cooperated, though there were some real fears. He shared how Mercy Hospital had set up a triage tents in the event of a surge, and how there was a case of COVID in the police department, but that those who came in contact with that officer were quarantined. He did mention one instance of pushback, though. Have a listen.
I had very limited complaints. One attorney did not want to wear a mask in Lorain City Hall. He actually got into our Lorain City Hall up into one of the courtrooms. The judge found out about it and actually threatened him that if he comes back into Lorain City Hall without a mask, he's going to turn him into the Bar Association. So, but the complaints have been very limited. I'd say most citizens have cooperated, and they understand that having a barrier or building up the layers between yourself and another citizen helps to prevent the spread of the disease.
That's right. I protect you, you protect me.
Absolutely.
Now, while back here on the fairgrounds, there was also some controversy, first with Confederate flags and the sale of Civil War memorabilia. That will not happen this year, not because it was banned, but because coronavirus caused a vendor to pull out. The concern also comes from the mayor of Wellington, who has called for the fair to be canceled this year altogether due to COVID. So not everyone in agreement, Lena, that the show should go on. This is one of the largest county fairs in the state. Tens of thousands of people expected to attend, though fair organizers say it should be safe. It will be safe.
What about Lorain schools? We're hearing there was a development late this afternoon.
Yes, that's absolutely right. The district announced that they are pushing back the start of the school year until Tuesday, September 8th. Teachers will be starting as normal. We know there will be some aspect of remote learning, but to what degree, we still don't know. There will be more to come from the district on that. But we do know the school year is going to be starting later than originally scheduled.
All right. Thanks so much, Drew, for that update.